So there's a couple of different things we can do here. Does that 1 point matter? That's the question. I don't think it does. So the better play here then is to do this, because we leave open the draw into Scorched Earth play. Everyone, Raptor Spank here, and today we have On the Grind, the show where I cover a deck I'm playing in Ranked. I'll break down the deck, talk about some flex spots, go over some basic mulligans, and then we'll put the deck through some ranked matches and review how we do afterwards. So this week, I'm returning to an old classic. This is probably my 5th or 6th time doing this deck on this show, but I realized I didn't do it last season, so we are going to break down the deck again rather than just go over the changes, and that deck is Ezreal Draven, or Draven Ezreal is probably the right way to say it, but everyone probably knows this deck. It's been around since beta. It's been good since beta. It's come in and out. It's gone through various stages. Sometimes it picked up Swain, things like that. But essentially, it's kind of a control-y, combo-y kind of deck. I typically wouldn't consider it control. It's really more tempo, which is kind of aggro control. That's what it is. But like, it's kind of filling the role of control in the current metagame. It's kind of the most controlling option you can really go that does well against a large portion of the field, essentially. But ultimately what it is, you're looking to play aggressive 3+ power threats while using powerful removal spells to kind of control the board and basically try to run your opponent down fairly quickly. So one of the primary win conditions is things like Captain Farron to just force a lot of damage through, but you have Ezreal as that backup win condition where all of these damage and target effects that you're doing slowly levels them up, and then hopefully you're able to chip in enough damage that slapping a level 2 Ezreal and casting a spell or two is enough to finish off your opponent, which is kind of the more combo aspect of the deck. But it really is a tempo deck. It's aggro control. It's not the most aggressive deck, but it is very aggressive while also removing your opponent's threats. So instead of being a raw aggro deck, it is that kind of I'm not as fast as them, but I'm killing their things, which slows them down to the point that I can outrace them. So how do we do that? Well, let's start off by looking at the champion package, which does begin with one of our most aggressive threats in Draven. 3 copies of him. He's a 3/3 for 3. Very good, effective cost body, essentially. He gives you spinning axes in hand, which we do have a number of ways to discard cards and get advantage from that. So that's pretty good as well. Extra copies of him create Whirling Death, which is really good for kind of using as removal. Block one thing, Whirling Death another. Or it can also be used for leveling him up very quickly in order to kind of turn him into a more direct win condition himself, because once he levels up, he does gain Overwhelm, so even if your opponent blocks him, he's doing a ton of damage, and you're generating a ton of axes. So that's not our primary plan. For the most part, he's just a really good, cost-effective 3/3 for 3 on that turn 3 that has quick attack, so we can just keep attacking with him, and your opponent likely can't get much from blocking him. He'll usually just kill whatever blocks, at least in the early game, without losing anything himself, and he'll generate more spinning axes when he swings. Just a great value piece for our deck, and one of our better ways to pressure our opponent early on. From there, we do have the 3 copies of Ezreal. As I mentioned, this is kind of our backup win condition, and something we can play a little more aggressively against certain aggro decks where they're going to have a hard time removing him. Decks like that are things like Spider aggro is a big one, but also discard aggro can be really great for this too, because they kind of need to use burn on him in order to kill him. Things like Get Excited, and oftentimes they will, but if they do that, that's one less burn spell that can go face, so that's great. And if they don't kill him, he generates these Mystic Shots every turn that he hits, and Mystic Shot is great against both of those decks and many other aggro decks for killing their threats. So he's also really good against Thresh Nasus, same reason. So he's kind of a much bigger part of certain matchups, but then into pretty much any matchup, he is that backup win condition that if we can target 6 things, which most things in our deck target things, so we can get to that 6 very quickly, very easily. He starts pinging our opponent anytime we cast a spell, and dealing even more damage if we target something of theirs. So this can kind of just flip and then do all that extra chip damage to our opponent to close out the late game. So that's the primary reason for him as well. And the fact that he's elusive does mean that a lot of decks right now, he can get even more chip damage in by just hitting them. So really good card, as always. It's our kind of second backup main win condition with the deck, so really important to what we're trying to do. But looking at the follower package, we have 3 copies of Ballistic Bot. The numbers of our 2 drops kind of flip-flop a lot, but in this case, Ballistic Bot is really strong right now, especially against Blade Dance decks, because it can soak a lot of attacks thanks to its 3 health, and it does generate us a lot of value every turn by creating the Ignition, which can help slowly burn our opponent down. Or, as I mentioned with Draven, we do have a number of things that discard cards, so Ignition is just extra free card advantage that we can pitch to our discard outlets. So this is just a really good turn 2 play against pretty much any deck, but right now we're running the full 3 copies because there are a lot of things that this blocks really, really well in the meta. Then from there, 2 copies of House Spider. I'm always torn on how many copies to include of House Spider. 2 does seem like kind of the best play right now, although the fact that it gives you 2 bodies makes it really, really good for the aggro matchups, and so it is good into things like Azir Aurelia because it does trade with most of the things they attack with. House Spider can actually block twice against blades anyways and sand soldiers until they start getting pumped, so it is really, really good right now, but in general, I do feel Ballistic Bot is giving us a little more advantage, and especially with things like Lissandra Talia coming out into the meta a bit more, this kind of has more universal uses than House Spider does. So House Spider is still really good, but we are running only the 2 copies of it. From there, 3 copies of Arachnoid Sentry. This is just a no-brainer. 3 cost Tribal is actually pretty important, as we'll cover once we talk about Tri-Beam in the spell section. But 3 cost Tribal, very important. 3 power, 3 cost, very good for going aggressive. And the fact that it stuns something is great for playing when your opponent is attacking to prevent their big thing from attacking, or can even be used very aggressively. If your opponent only has like 1 blocker, only 1 good blocker, you can always stun that blocker to clear the way for a nice big attack. So lots of value here, and the important thing to know is its ability does target, so it helps level up our Ezreal as well, while also building our own board presence. So that's one of our better tempo pieces in the deck. From there, we also have 3 copies of Sump Dredger. This is one of the discard outlets I mentioned. We can use this to cycle an Ignition to draw a real card from our deck, or cycle an Axe for the same reason, so that's really great. Otherwise, it's a 3 cost 4/3, so it's incredibly well statted. And again, it can curve nicely into like turn 2 Ballistic Bot, turn 3 play Sump Dredger, pitching the Ignition. So just a real good other 3 cost for powering up our Tri-Beam that's very aggressive and can block a number of times. So really, really strong, especially in the meta right now, but it's always been a really good card in the deck. And our last follower is 2 copies of Captain Farron. As I mentioned, in many ways, Captain Farron is one of the biggest or best finishers in the deck, because if he can attack, he's an 8/8 with Trample or Overwhelm, so ton of damage gets through that way. But he also creates a couple of decimates in hand, so even if they can block him, even if they can kill him, that's 8 points of burn that we create right then and there, and that's usually enough to close out the game from that point. So one of our better finishers, and again, if you've leveled up Ezreal, casting those decimates are going to do even more damage, so it's a great way to close out the game. Very aggressive unit, and it is an 8/8 for 8, so kind of following the similar stat lines of most of the units we have in the deck. But the big meat and potatoes of the deck is the spell package. As I mentioned, we kind of fit the role of the control deck in the current meta, and that's because of our very high number of removal, or primarily removal-based spells. This does start with 3 copies of Thermogenic. This kind of bounces between 2 to 3 throughout the meta, but right now having an answer on turn 1 is actually kind of a big deal, since there's a number of threatening Azir cards that can come down on turn 1, so Thermogenic Beam is our only way to really kill stuff on turn 1, aside from playing against like Bilgewater Spring, playing Crusty Codger, and Ravenous flocking it, but that's pretty rare right now, so most cases our only answer for things on turn 1 is Thermogenic Beam, so that's why we're running it. And also the nice thing is it does scale well because it kills anything that has health equal to the mana we spend on this, so it's a great way of catching big units as well in the late game. And something that oftentimes gets forgotten, but you can always cast it at 0 with a leveled up Ezreal, and that's still going to do 2 damage to your opponent's Nexus because it's still targeting something, even though it's not doing any damage. So even if you have like 2 of these in the late game, and you have a flipped Ezreal and no mana, you could just cast the Thermogenic Beams to blast your opponent a bit. So that's also something to keep an eye out for. From there, we do have the 3 copies of Ravenous Flock. This is just really, really good in our deck because we have a lot of ways to do little inconsequential chip damage, and also there's a lot of things in the meta right now that have high health values that the rest of our removal doesn't necessarily line up well against. But if we can deal a little bit of damage to them, we can suddenly Ravenous Flock them, kill them. Very cost-effective removal once you can do so. And even beyond dealing damage, we can always use Sentry to stun something so that then we can Ravenous Flock that as well. So that's another out we have as well. And then we do have 2 copies of Rummage. This does go up and down in the meta over time. Essentially, it's one of the better card advantage spells in Piltover because we discard 2 cards to draw 2 cards, which isn't card advantage, that's card filtering. Typically, but since we have things like Ballistic Bot or Draven that create all these free cards in hand, or even Ezreal's Mystic Shot sometimes, we're basically pitching free cards that aren't real cards to get real cards out of our deck, so it is essentially kind of like card draw because we're turning those weaker cards into better cards, hopefully. But that said, right now, we don't have quite as much discard fodder as sometimes this deck has previously had, so it's a little bit more important to be having playables and removal cards than rummaging away things right now. So that's why we're down to 2 copies instead of 3. We do still have 3 copies of Mystic Shot as well, though, because this is just great cost-effective removal. 2 mana, deal 2 damage, deals with a lot of threats right now, especially with Thresh Nasus and Azir Aurelia, where a lot of things have 1 health to 2 health. It kills Bakai Reaper, for example, so a lot of good things there, and in the late game, it can actually be really good off the top of your deck, because you can always go Nexus with it to deal extra damage and kill your opponent, so lots of great things we can do with Mystic Shot, easy include, quite happy to have it. One of the bigger meta reads, though, is the 3 copies of Culling Strike. This has come in and out and in and out of the deck over and over time. Right now, it is definitely a Culling Strike meta. This deals with Azir very effectively. 3 mana, kill Azir, great. It's hard for our opponent to deal with it. They kind of have to go turn 2 Dais. They have to go turn 1 nothing, turn 2 Dais, turn 3 Azir with Shaped Stone to deal with Culling Strike. And that's still kind of them playing fairly poorly on tempo, so that's not always going to be a huge blowout, although it most times will be. This does also deal with Aurelia as long as they don't have any buff spell. It can deal with Lissandra, it can deal with Talia, so just a lot of things we catch with Culling Strike right now that does make it worth running, and worth running all 3 copies in my opinion. Up from there, we do have 2 copies of Scorched Earth. This is another thing that comes in and out of the deck. It was very popular around the Bilgewater springtime, and it's popular again because originally it's a good answer for Dais, and that's the big reason. But Lissandra Talia also gives us more reason to run this because we can use this on things like Frozen Thrall or other landmarks that are going to be a problem for us. So it's definitely a fairly Scorched Earth heavy meta right now, and we are definitely going to take advantage of that by running the 2 copies of Scorched Earth, even though Noxian Guillotine is a great card, and I do love it very dearly. This is the card we're running right now. Up from there, 2 copies of Static Shock. This is just a great way to turbo level Ezreal by dealing 1 damage to 2 different targets. It's also great against Azir Aurelia and discard aggro because both of them have a lot of 1 health units that this can kill their 2 units. It can also always go face for extra damage. It does draw you a card too, so it replaces itself in your hand. Lots of great value. It's also great to set up things like Scorched Earth or Ravenous Flock. You can ping a Nasus with this, so you can Scorched Earth kill it, or ping an Azir so that you can kill it with Ravenous Flock. Just a ton of good value things you can get out of Static Shock, so it is worth running right now. And finally, one of the other big cards in the deck, 3 copies of Tribeam Improbulator. This is just a great card that gets better and better as we cast 3-cost spells, which is why I mentioned the 3-cost tribal aspect of the deck. So Draven, Ezreal, Sump Dredger, Arachnoid Sentry, Culling Strike, Scorched Earth, even Thermogenic Beam can do this if you time it right. But all of those things make Tri-Beam bigger, so it deals more damage and summons a bigger unit, this is kind of like the perfect tempo card. It kills something of your opponent and puts something on the board. So you're dealing with their board and building your board, and that's kind of the whole point of a tempo deck. You're slowing down your opponent's progress while speeding up your own, and we can do some really busted things with this. This isn't the best meta for Tri-Beam in the sense that, like, the deck you used to run Thorn of the Rose, and if you ran Noxian Guillotine, if you got a multiple Guillotine turn, that would be even more powering up of Tri-Beam, but we can still very easily get Tri-Beam to 3 or 4 damage, summoning a 3 or 4 cost, and there's a lot of good ones at that cost point for us that can make for a pretty strong board shape, although of course it is always RNG, and there are some bad hits you can find, like say getting a Darkwater Scourge on your opponent's turn after they've attacked, or things like that. So there's definitely some RNG that can hurt you on this, but I mean, it's a body while killing something else. It's worth running all 3 copies, especially right now where we need to kill things and block things, and this is our best way to do both in a single card. But talking about some flex spots, there's actually not a ton to go over, so I'm only really going to talk about 3 cards, because this list, again, has existed since beta. It's so fine-tuned at this point that there's just like a couple of things that you consider bringing in based on your meta calls, and so those are really the only ones worth mentioning. It's not really worth mentioning talking about other stuff. I could talk about Swain again, but if you're interested in Ezreal Swain, you can really look at one of my previous deck guides on that, because it's pretty much the same deck. It just has a different win condition in Swain as well. But the big flex spots, I'm going to mention Get Excited, even though this is definitely not a great list for it. But Get Excited has come in and out of the deck at times because it's a good 3 damage spell. It does cost 3 mana as well, so it does work towards our 3 mana tribal. The downside is we do have to discard something, so when we're kind of a little bit light on fodder, like this version is, where we're running a little less ways to generate cards in hand or benefit from discarding, then Get Excited is not quite as good. But the nice thing here is it can always go face. You can just hit your opponent with it, which is really, really good. Something that's definitely worth considering, because you do have some pretty hype turns where you can flip an Ezreal and play like 3 mana Get Excited, dealing 4 damage. Lots of great things here. It kind of helps you close out the game. But right now, 3 damage is not particularly relevant because most things we run up against can either die for less damage or can survive 3 damage without dying. So right now, not particularly great, and it's more worth running things like Culling Strike that can answer Azir rather than running this that's a little more flexible. Up from there as well, we do also have Thorn of the Rose that I mentioned. This was really, really good before this season. It was a great answer for Spectral Matron for this deck, because Spectral Matron was really, really bad for this deck, but essentially what this would do is by giving us that extra stun, we could always use that to stun the Watcher, and if we had like Sentry plus this, we could stun 2 Watchers, so even if they play Spectral Matron, copy the Watcher, and then they play another Watcher immediately, we can stun the second one as well. So having all those extra stuns was really, really good for dealing with that. It's also fairly good for dealing with Nasus himself, because even if you can't stun him, you can always use this to strip Spell Shield off so that you can use something else to deal with him. So there's a lot of good uses for this card, but right now, based on where the meta is, we kind of have to be a little bit more controlling, I guess. And this is not quite as good, since stun isn't a removal in and of itself, and we kind of need to be a little more aggressive with our removal, and Thorn of the Rose is kind of a weak body, because while it is very powerful, it only has 1 health, so it only blocks once, and it probably won't force damage through against the current meta, so it's kind of been phased out by the fact that we had to go a little more controlling rather than a little more tempo aggro ourselves. So that's kind of why it's out right now, but I still see some people running it right now, and it's definitely worth considering. including a copy or two. So that's something there. And then one of my favorite cards, Noxian Guillotine. This card is just really, really good in the right metas. And just right now, most things aren't surviving damage. So you're not having too many damaged units that you have to deal with. This was better last season where we could use it to remove things like Nasus or other big threats like Trundle. Stuff like that was a little more prevalent in the last meta. So then we could get the multiple hits with this, which is great with Tri-Beam. And it's just, we didn't need to deal with landmarks much last season. So this was a fantastic way to just deal with big units. And it is a better way to deal with big units than Scorched Earth because it does what Scorched Earth does, but has the added upside of creating another copy in hand, which you either use on another damage unit, or you can always pitch it to things like Rummage or Sump Dredger, stuff like that. So that's another reason we kind of have less discard fodder is because we're not running Guillotine, we're running Scorched Earth. But right now the ability to hit landmarks is a little bit more important, so that's why Guillotine has been pushed out by Scorched Earth. As for some basic mulligans, you're going to want to keep something that's a bit aggressive but also controlling. And since we are kind of playing the role of control in the meta, you are fairly rewarded for kind of matching your hand with the deck you're playing against. But still, generally speaking, you're going to want one unit to come down on the board by turn 3. So you either need a Ballistic Bot or House Spider, or you need one of our 3 drops. And Sump Dredger's not usually good unless you can do like Ballistic Bot into him, because otherwise you don't want to pitch a real card to Sump Dredger if you can help it. You'll keep Draven though pretty much into any matchup. If you have him, you'll keep him. Pretty much a snap keep. Ezreal, you'll actually mulligan into most matchups, except for like the ones I mentioned, like Discard Aggro and Spider Aggro, where you can get a fair amount of value out of him. He's not awful into Azir Aurelia either, but he's a bit slow against them, and they can often block him with their elusive, so he's a lot less effective against them. Captain Farron, you'll mulligan him in almost every single hand you see him. It's very rare that you'd want to keep him, and you'd only really keep him if the rest of your hand is like perfect gas. But generally speaking, you want one unit coming down by turn 3, and then at least 1 to 2 forms of removal, so that you can keep things kind of going in your favor. 2 units is great, especially if you can do like a 2-drop, 3-drop. That's going to be good against most other decks. But against aggro, we're really more looking to control the field. So removal is going to be a lot better against aggro. We can even go down less units. House Spider is great against aggro. Ballistic Bot's not bad either because of the fact that it can block fairly effectively. And even Sentry is not that bad against aggro, especially if your opponent's attacking on turn 3, because then they can play something on turn 3 and then you Sentry stun that thing, buy you some time, and it can block something that deals 1 damage, so it at least gets 1 block against like an Aurelia deck. So that's pretty good into those matchups. Against mid-range, you're just going to look for things that have 3 power or more and just try to run your opponent down. Ezreal's actually not awful into mid-range because they have a hard time blocking elusive usually. Although that said, the Mystic Shots aren't going to do a ton, so it's really more that you want to wait until Ezreal's leveled up to slam him into that matchup, and then hopefully you get an attack or 2 in. But against mid-range, you're also going to look for things that are going to deal 3 damage, or similarly. So things like Ravenous Flock are a great way for you to like chump with a Spiderling, then clear it with Ravenous Flock, or they're going to have challengers oftentimes that are going to survive damage, and then you can finish them off with Ravenous Flock. Thermogenic Beam's great because it scales with their threats, and then Scorched Earth also good because we'll do chip damage over time, and this can deal with their massive threats. But mid-range isn't particularly popular right now. It's not doing very well against the field per se, so you don't see a ton of that. Against control, we really want to be aggressive. You want to find a 2-drop, you want to find a 3-drop, you want to just pound as much damage through as fast as you can, while hopefully trying to get as many targets as you can. It's going to be hard to do against most control decks, but if you can level up an Ezreal, he's a great way to close out the game, as is Captain Farron because of those decimates as well, and that hopefully should give you enough damage to get through any healing they have, but it's a bit trickier with that, so you do want to do as much damage as early on as you can with threats that can survive damage fairly well. Things with 3 health are a premium here. And just, yeah, look to run them down as fast as possible. And that's the deck for this week's episode. So if you like the deck, there's a deck code, deck link in the description below. And let's jump into some ranked matches and see how we do. Yeah, I don't actually know how this matchup goes. I think we want to be aggro here, right? We kind of just want to run them down before they can kill us. Scorched Earth might actually do something in this matchup. Ravenous Flock, I'm a little less certain of. I bet this can work, though. Farron we definitely don't keep. Draven we keep because I said we have to go aggro in this matchup, and this is actually one of our most aggressive cards. Ooh. Game wide. Okay. Yeah. I could pop that. I don't think we do yet, though. Ooh, I like Ezreal. Ezreal's actually good.
It's Draven time.
Culling Strike isn't massive, but it could work. Like, early Lissandra gets punished by Culling Strike fairly well.
Nothing escapes my
I think we're still just swinging into this.
Look out for reavers.
I don't think it's particularly great to Culling Strike that. I thought about it, though. In all fairness, I did think about it. Okay, that's pretty close to leveling at this point with Drakthorn.
These old eyes still see far clear.
Huh. Okay. I think we run out Ezreal. Because we can Ezreal plus Static Shock. And I think we are going to just go for that right now. I don't think we get particularly punished by this, but we might. But again, we are kind of the aggro deck, so we are really just thinking we need to go fast here.
Light the signal fire.
That would have been good a lot sooner. Well, we're gonna open swing here. I think we need to keep mana up for this Scorched Earth to kill that. Although we could kill Drakthorn too, although I'm not... Oh, that's a little unfortunate. That is extraordinarily unfortunate. Everything that just happened, in fact. I should have used the spinning axes. I was moving too quick there. Well, the Scorched Earth does a lot less now, so I think maybe we just kill Talia. Get an extra Ezreal activation. I think at this point we're just fighting over the Drakthorn rather than fighting over these thralls.
Gonna make a meal of
I don't like the idea of losing Ezreal here. But I think what we need to do is we need to pitch 2 axes, see if we can find a better way to kill this. Yeah. That's a better way to kill that.
ages pass, yet I remain.
That's scary. Do I play... yes, because I don't think we're particularly cost-effective to anything else here.
Wrap 'em up tight.
Oh. Interesting. I did not expect that. Oh, it's right. It's fearsome. I can't block that. Not without doing something like this.
Now we're cooking.
And then if he ice shards, we just lose this Ezreal no matter what happens. Yeah. Can't do much about that, unfortunately. Maybe we should have gone for trying to kill Lissandra. think we just go straight to combat here. We're getting close, but so is our opponent. Yeah, I mean, that does some work. But at least now we can kill Lissandra fairly easily. I think we are going to Ignition, because at this point we're just trying to do as much damage as we can. Yikes. Okay. I mean, we still have a while before those pop. So I think we are at the kill Lissandra here. And we may even kill one of these Frosted Thralls now. Although it's not necessarily particularly required to do so. That is certainly generating background noise. We could try to kill this... We could try to kill this, or set up killing this Talia as well. Maybe that's for the best. Maybe we're not going to Ignition next turn. We may actually just pitch that to, like, Rummage. Because we're at the point of finding Ezreal's pretty good for us. Obviously, we could play Captain Farron this turn, which is really great, too. Yeah, maybe. Do we actually just go Farron, like, Ignition? And just go for killing our opponent next turn? I mean, in theory, that works. Okay. Yep. But he doesn't have the attack next turn. That's the thing. Can I take that hit? Yes. So this isn't just lethal, right? Because we can't cast everything this turn. But I can drop him to 1. Wait, so we swing with this first. We swing with this first. He blocks with one of the Thralls. We're going to Spinning Axe. Pitching Ignition. And see if he has a way to reduce our power or increase the health of that. If not, we're pretty favored to win from here. Okay, that works. Yeah, that's not a problem. I mean, so we're not in great shape here, obviously. But we double decimate, and then we need, like... Okay, that's really bad for us. He did have the Kindly Tavern Keep. Okay. That limits our outs, for sure. We're still not dead because of this Rummage. It definitely limits our outs, though. Because now we have to go, like, runner, like, Mystic Shot. Doable, but extraordinarily unlikely. Okay, that's game. Yeah, we can't actually recover from that. Yep. Okay, he had enough life gain in hand. Unfortunate. Very, very close to winning that one, but my opponent high-rolled incredibly well. We should have killed that early Frozen Thrall, too, so he couldn't get the continued effects off it. But, yeah. Not particularly bad of a feeling loss, since really that was just our opponent high-rolled insanely well, and we drew everything in the wrong order, like the whatchamacallit, the bot on turn 5 or whatever instead of turn 2, but yep. It's a card game. Luck determines a lot. Interesting. So this is the old TF Swain, but they're running GP instead because TF is so bad now? I assume that's what this is? Captain Farron might actually... Like, this may be the one time that Captain Farron's worth keeping. Static Shock also hits a lot. We don't get to attack on the Sentry turn, but... You know what? I'm going to keep this whole hand. Because I think Farron's actually good in this matchup because they have no life gain. So this is likely to be lethal the turn it comes down. And it comes down a turn before the lock. And then also the good thing here is I can go Ballistic Bot turn 2. And then turn 3, I can either Sentry or Static Shock, depending on what they play. So this is a good hand, but this game has been stealing every win from me lately, so... It has been a lot of opponents high rolling lately. We are going to Ignition here, because they pass priority, so... Okay. That plus Ravenous, I assume? Do we run out like a 0 value Sentry, maybe? Oh. No, we don't run out a 0 value Sentry. I think he might still be able to kill this Ballistic Bot, but... Okay, well, if he can kill this Ballistic Bot, he is kind of dumb for waiting. Yeah, we just full swing here. Yeah, then Ravenous on this. Okay, yeah, my opponent's bad. My opponent is actively bad. He just let me have a free Ignition off that. We may still lose this game anyways, but... I mean, this is Legends of Runeterra. Crazier things have happened. Now the question is, do we kill this with Mystic Shot right now? Yeah. I think that's better than trying to do, like, double Static Shock. I don't think that's actually particularly useful to us. Oh, we're kind of in bad shape to a Swain this turn. Okay, well, he offered the pass. We will definitely take that. We were very dead to a Swain, so... Oh wait, Swain's 6 mana, isn't he? Oh no, it's 5. I was alright. Okay, yeah, that's fine. I mean, I assume this means Ezreal's dead this turn, but that's fine. I think we offered the trade. Problem is, we're at 19 health, they're at 17 health, so the fact that health totals are as close as they are, okay, well, that's good for us. The fact that health totals are as close as they are and we've done so little damage to them is actually very bad for us. We can take a hit like that, I think, right? Well, I mean, we're not blocking. I mean, I could double Static Shock. Oh, that's terrible though, right? What else are we doing this turn if not that? That's the real question. Okay, I think we'll Static Shock once. Rummage, that's pretty bad. And he's pretty far off from the Swain lock, at least. I could play Captain Farron here. Is that worth it? I think it is, actually. I think on-curve Captain Farron's one of the better ways for us to get back in this game. Okay.
Stop bragging if you could back it up. Can't stop me.
And then we Mystic Shot this. I don't need to use this Thermo Beam here. So I'm not going to. Unless he plays Swain. If he plays Swain, then absolutely. That works too, actually. So then we'll Thermo Gangplank. so that Scorched Earth can kill him and Ezreal levels up. And then next turn we can like Scorch Earth Static Shock. Really depends on what happens here.
Show 'em pay.
Think we go for this. Okay. That worked. I don't think I need to do anything else yet. I think my opponent has to be the proactive one here. Can I kill that this turn? I don't think so, right? So he has his Swain now. And I could ping both things. I think we go for this. Oh, well, that was one of the worst things we could have pulled off that.
Counterattack!
So what we can do here is we can like Static Shock. Or in theory, he's actually dead here. If I don't Static Shock. Okay, yeah. Never mind. Yeah, that should be lethal. That should be multiple forms of lethal. I don't like. So he needs to do. Yeah, we won. Because he has to do 13 points of damage and 5 mana. It's not going to happen. We just double decimate plus Mystic Shot. So even if he can kill this Ezreal, double decimate is 8 damage. Mystic Shot's the other 2. That gets us to 10. He's dead. So yeah, that was a free win there. After so much Lissandra Talia, we'll take it though. TFGP, weird. Are Masters the only people playing the game anymore? Yeah, I mean, Culling Strike probably does something here. I don't think we want double Culling Strike, and with how weak the rest of our hand is, we can't keep this Captain Farron. Even though, same argument as the GP Swain deck, is that, you know, Captain Farron is good in the matchup, but we can't actually take it. Good start for him. Zero cost plays in Noxus are 0, I think, right? This is just time wasting. Now, if he ropes out, that'd be great for us. Okay, so he's roping us actively. Got it. What do we do next turn? I mean, we probably don't Thermo, right? I mean, we don't need to do anything this turn. That's true. We don't actually need to do anything this turn. Banking the mana is worth more, because if what we're going to do is Culling Strike kill something, like, we can do that next turn. I suppose now if we wanted to, like, Thermo Culling Strike, we could Thermo this turn, Culling Strike the next turn. I don't think that's really worth it, though. Yeah, so we don't want to take all of this damage, so we'll kill him, I guess, and take the 3 down to 15. And then we will play Draven. I guess there's an argument for going Ezreal instead, but I mean, like, they could just Culling Strike the Ezreal, and that's actually pretty bad for us. But the thing is here is that we are not going to be able to get the bonus off Ezreal, so it's not worth playing Ezreal here. Wow, he took the damage. I mean, I guess he's a fair bit ahead of us in health right now. So I guess he has that going for him. We have so many 3 costs right now, though, that this could get to be a fairly large Tri-Beam. Gotta think here. I mean, if he plays a Twisted Fate, we're going to have to deal with it, right? I suppose we don't have to deal with it this turn. Not with the new 9-card level up. Okay. Yeah, that's fine.
Who says I don't?
I mean, I think there's a high chance, even without the Swain in his deck, that he does have Ravenous Flock. And obviously that would be kind of unfortunate for us if he did, at this present moment in time. Double Rummage is not great for us, to be honest. Do I need to Thermo to damage this? I don't think so. We're probably going to Tri-Beam now. As much as I want to play like Ezreal and get an even bigger Tri-Beam off, we are probably Tri-Beaming. Maybe not. Maybe we need to kill this now. Although I suppose I can Tri-Beam and kill that, right? Like if I Tri-Beam Ravenous Flock, and that saves me more mana in the long run. And it gives me an extra blocker. I guess this is the right play. Did that just... Wow. Speaking of high rolls... That's funny. That is actually funny. I mean, I assume he's swinging with the other stuff. We will block the other things. That we will do. Alright, well. Easy answer then. Ezreal's getting up there. I think we play the Ezreal and swing with that. I'm trying to think what he could do that would really cause problems for us this round. What are we even looking to do this round? Maybe House Spider, Mystic Shot, kill the Twisted Fate? I mean, Twisted Fate is very hard to level up now, but if we don't do anything about it, it will get there eventually. We do have this Captain Farron to win the late, in theory. They've managed to dish out 6 points of damage, though, so we are kind of starting to get into the risk area. So right now, the current plan is Basilisk Rider, Pull Powder Keg, Draven, Ezreal, and maybe we send the Sump Dredger in. I assume this deck has stuff like Make It Rain. Oh, he's deciding what he has to block. Oh, interesting. Well, now we don't swing with Sump, but we do swing with Draven. And we use Thermo to kill this, probably. Okay. Yeah, that's fine. So we put up a couple blockers and we kill Twisted Fate this turn. Best thing that could happen is he plays like pick a card. Is pick a card? Yeah, pick a card's 2 mana. And this will get Ezreal to 4. I see why he was thinking so much, though. Actually, do we kill this? Do we kill this Twisted Fate? So I know I said that this gets out of control fairly quickly, but he has to draw 7 more cards. 1 for turn makes that still 6. And by killing him, we allow him to play another one. Which we're kind of in a bad position if he gets another Twisted Fate, because red card does a lot of damage. So as funny as that is, I think we actually, we don't kill this Twisted Fate. We'll see if they punish us for that. I think what I'm doing here is that we're rummaging and then we're stunning something. Because stun gets us to 4 on the Ezreal. And the rummage first allows us the chance, and it's probably going to be rummage, pitch, second rummage, and spinning axe. And the reason you do that first is just in case we hit the tri-beam. Well, that sucks. That sucks a lot. Not surprising, because Culling Strike's really good in the meta right now, so... Alright, well, no tri-beam. Well, Ezreal win condition, not particularly likely at this point.
No way.
So I guess we play the second House Spider.
Go with the flow.
Do we stun that? Is that trolling to do that? I don't think so. I think we do that. And I think now we kill the Twisted Fate.
Looks like trouble.
That's weird. Hold the phone. Okay. That's what he's going for? Alright, we're gonna kill this Twisted Fate, though. That was a low-risk block, because realistically speaking, that wasn't going to hit my opponent anyways, because of how many units they have. Alright, well, he's low on mana. I'm low on mana. This is the best play, because if he has his own Captain Farron, that sucks. Okay. That's a little sketchy. But yeah, we swing with our Overwhelmers. Okay. Puts him to a very low health total. That in fact puts him to dead. That's a neat trick, though, that he's got going there. So he doesn't want to lose the Dreadway, but I think he has to block with the Dreadway. And honestly, he's not that punished to block with Dreadway, because well, okay, we can actually punish that a lot more because we have Static Shock in hand. But yes, he could do this block, which has his Dreadway live. And then he doesn't take trample damage. And we, in theory, no longer have lethal on the board. But this dies next turn. So I'm assuming a Gangplank comes down. Weird that it doesn't tell you how many times it's damaged in hand. That's interesting. I mean, I'm assuming a Gangplank comes down here. Oh. Well, that's kind of better for us, because we can do like this. Of course, we are going to take a lot of damage here, because we're going to take 6 anyways. What's better at this point? So there's a couple of different things we can do here. Does that 1 point matter? That's the question. I don't think it does. So the better play here then is to do this, because we leave open the draw into Scorched Earth play. Okay. Doesn't even matter. He might think that I have the Scorched Earth already. That might be why he scooped there, is that he's thinking I already have it in hand. Whereas we were in a much more tentative spot there. But essentially by doing that, if we draw into Scorched Earth, we kill the Captain Farron. If we don't draw into Scorched Earth, we decimate, and then we just go to our turn and instant decimate. And that should be able to do more damage than Bilgewater's capable at doing in response, but hard to say. Close game, but we got there. Okay. Scary. This matchup is always scary. They can do a ton of damage very quickly. Static Shock is good here. Culling Strike, also kind of good, although definitely not great. because of the fact that he has visions and things like that. We might regret pitching that Culling Strike, but like it doesn't. Oh no, never mind. This hand's way better now. Oh, and he has no turn 1 play. That's very good for us. This is the perfect turn 2, because that still leaves up Sentry next turn and Static Shock next turn.
Can you improve perfection?
I have the best job.
Well, that's a Sentry play. Unfortunately, we don't have the Ravenous Flock to follow it up.
So ordinary.
Yeah, I think we fight for every hit point at this point.
Time
Wow.
for the moneymakers.
He actually has the kill? Yikes. Well, we forced him to use that stuff, and that's at least kind of good for us. Do I bank the mana, or do I use the ignition? How likely are we to care about banked mana here? Probably somewhat likely. Now, we can't kill this yet, and that is a problem. Do we pitch? Yeah, I think so. Like I said, Culling Strike's not likely to do a lot for us. Interesting. You don't see that much anymore. Maybe that was a silly Mystic shot.
Got an axe with your name on it.
Oh, Whirling Death? Oh, that's so bad for us. Oh, we did not count on that. That was Draven's. Yeah, a second copy of Draven. Okay. Well, that sucked. That was a worst case scenario for us. Now, he should just open attack here. We'll see if he does.
Let's do this.
Okay. And we are going to try to kill this Draven. He gets the hit in, but this is enough damage to kill that.
You suck.
That is an oddly good card.
Just you and
He
me.
does have the Jinx, though. And he can almost empty his entire hand with what we see. We don't know what else he's holding. Well, I think we probably do this. We probably just open swing. Yeah, because he takes that. Oh, we may have left ourselves open here, actually. That might have been a mistake. He may have the 6 cost empty your whole hand, and that will level her up. Well, that's a spell he's looking at playing. Okay. Okay. That's not that bad for us. Can he pitch survival skills? No, he's gonna level her up. He's gonna level her up and kill that.
I'm on a roll.
Well, he's high rolling pretty well, but he is empty-handed now. Crowd favor +2/+2. Because he had the visions too. That's the outrageous part. Is that he had visions to pump the damage as well. I think we might be in the spot that we some treasure. Are you kidding me? Are you actually kidding me? No way! That is complete BS. That is complete and total BS.
I'm a peddler, not a meddler.
Yeah. I think we have to do that, even though this puts us in a very, very tentative spot. But we kill Jinx again, and he only has one left in the deck and 30 cards. I mean, chances he finds it are pretty low, right? Outrageous, dude. He's gonna top deck Decimate here, too. Just you watch. He's gonna top deck Decimate. Okay. Well, we in theory can kill him with stuff on the... Okay. Redraw. Interesting. Alright. Woo! Okay. There is some justice in this world. He didn't completely perfectly top deck. Outrageous that he goes from no cards and just top decks another Jinx, though. Ugh. We'll take that, though. Okay, Azir Burn. Sketchy. But it is a matchup where Culling Strike will do something. Sick. I love this hand. I'm gonna keep literally all of this. This is a good turn 2 play, so is House Spider. We'll see which one I want to go with. I assume he Dune Keepers us here. Okay. That's not quite as bad as a Dune Keeper, but it's effectively a Dune Keeper. The chances that this does less damage than a Dune Keeper is very low. We're gonna House Spider next turn. Oh, and 1 floating mana for Ravenous Flock. Nice. Almost screw that up. Oh, Lord. That's gross. That'll help. Oh, he doesn't have... Huh. He doesn't have the Azir. We have options now. I think I know our best option. Oh, Lord. Well, that's a pretty good high roll for him. Doesn't change our decision, just changes how much it hurts. So, we block here, we block here. And then, obviously, we Culling Strike this. So that puts us to 8. Very low health total to be at. Okay. And then Tri-Beam can kill the other Reaper, so we can use Thermo on this. Although the question is it worth using Thermo on that? Don't think it actually is. I think we just Tri-Beam this turn, kill this instantly. Oh, okay, that changes things a bit. Now we have options. Now he finds the Azir. Oh, wow. How did I know? How did I know? Okay, what can we do here? We can't take another hit from this Reaper, so we have to be able to kill it. So the question is, what's our best way of doing this? I think this, right? Because then next turn we can kill him with Ravenous Flock. And now our Tri-Beam's a bit bigger. Well, let's see what he plays. That's going to be the big question. Okay. So we do this, and we do this. We are not in good shape here. Let's make that clear. We are 100% not in good shape here. This was one of the best things he could find. And Tri-Beam didn't quite high roll us. I think this is the best play.
Investigate.
Drops us to 5.
Stop that!
We're not particularly likely to be able to kill that.
Fact, I am superior life form.
What? Well, that scares me. That scares me a lot.
System upgrade. Rise, metal brethren.
I think we open swing here, right? I think we're dead, but... I definitely think we're dead. That was not something we were ready for. I assume that means he has Decimate in hand. Yep, and that's the game. Yep, he was thinking about playing Decimate last turn, I think. But, yeah, he found the right window for it. That was an incredible high roll from our opponent, but yeah, that happens. Alright, so how'd we do in our matches? Well, I played a total of 7 games, and we went 4-3. I didn't show one of them because it was Lissandra Talia again, and then that was one of the losses, and then a win I didn't show was another win against Draven Jinx. Similar thing. Might have been an even more one-sided game, but I figured kind of got the full look of the deck from what we saw. But essentially, 2 of our 3 losses, Lissandra Talia, the other one obviously to Azir Darius. Azir Darius is kind of going to be a concerning matchup probably most times because they're an aggro deck that kind of is a bit harder to deal with our removal because they don't have as many 1 health things as, say, Draven Jinx does, which is obviously a pretty good power point for us, is killing things with the 1 health. So it's definitely not as good as that matchup for us, although I would expect it to be a lot better. They did high roll pretty heavily in that last match with all the 1-drops that they pulled off, and then drawing into Azir the next turn was just kind of, things worked perfect for them, which was very unfortunate for us, but that happens. It's not a huge problem, and I would expect that to be a fairly, if not rough, close to 50-50 matchup where you can kind of lose out of anywhere in that one, so that's kind of to be expected. Lissandra Talia 0-2, that seems much more problematic because they have decent life gain, they have decent ways to deal with our threats, so we kind of have to go very aggressive and have the right answers at the right time, which is kind of hard to do. And you got to be like, as we learned in the first game, which is the one we saw, you have to kind of be aggressive, I think, with your thrall removal so that you don't get blown out by like a Talia copy on something that's already low. So I think you have to be a little bit more proactive in that matchup, but it still is pretty hard to do because our answers for what they're doing are very expensive mana-wise. In the case of like Scorched Earth, it's 3 mana, so it's hard to do that while also being aggressive, and we do need to be aggressive and force a bunch of damage through, so by the time they have this crazy late game that's way better than ours, they're already low enough that we can kill them. But not easy to do that, and that's kind of the problem, because they do have lots of early units too that can kind of buy them time and block, and we don't have very effective ways of forcing damage through, aside from something like a Captain Farron. And the problem with Captain Farron is that he comes down on the same turn that they can have Frozen Thrall, so that matchup feels pretty bad. Then we had those really weird Gangplank games, which I haven't seen that deck in forever, so I'm not really sure what that's trying to counter in the meta right now, but weird games, weird wins. Draven Jinx, I'm much less surprised to see so much of, and the 2-0 is kind of to be expected. I typically have a little bit of a harder time against Draven Jinx, so I think we did fairly well, but it's definitely, it's a favored matchup regardless, because we do have a lot of good removal for lining up against their stuff. It's just we don't have life gain, which makes the late game a little bit scarier with them. But since we're also pressuring their hit points at the same time, usually it's not too big of a problem unless they really high roll. So that's at least a meta deck we did fairly well against. Lissandra Talia is a meta deck we didn't do very well against. Azir Darius is kind of meta, I guess, and we didn't do very well against. And then we won against two pretty non-meta decks, but I would expect the win rate to probably still, well, kind of probably stay around the same percentage, but, you know, kind of stabilize over the long run if I played a bunch more games, because Draven Ezreal is a really good deck. It's always been a really good deck. It's been meta since the beta, since before Bilgewater even existed. It's probably still going to be without any major nerfs or anything like that. So the deck's still probably... it's a good way to grind if you're just looking for playing a deck that can kind of win against any matchup. There's no matchup where you're really just like dead. I do think that Azir Aurelia is kind of more problematic for this deck, although I haven't played that after the nerfs, but Aurelia was pretty good against this deck. MF Aurelia did really well against this deck, so that's kind of a bit rough, but it does tend to do fairly well against Thresh Nasus, because Scorched Earth can kill their Nasus as long as we can deal damage to him before he attacks, and our removal lines up really well against them, so that matchup tends to be a bit better. We didn't see it yet so far this patch, but it's a matchup that should be a bit better. So we didn't see the meta decks we're better against, and we did see the meta deck that we're not so great against. So depends on how much Lissandra Talia is getting played right now and how much we keep running into it on whether Ezreal Draven's really worth playing right now. But it is a good meta deck that has strong odds against a large portion of the field. So it's a fun deck. I always enjoy playing Draven Ezreal, and if you like the deck, if you're interested in the deck, there is a deck code and a deck link in the description below, so you can always give it a try yourself. And if you enjoyed the video, leave a like, comment below, and subscribe for more Legends of Runeterra content.